Hey, even to preface it, as anyone that comes in early or whatever,
Yeah.
the 2.5 episodes I've seen of X-Men 97 a- are the best representation of X-Men I have seen in.
But
I haven't. Yeah,
you aren't lying.
I can't believe how good it is. Like,
You are not lying.
I tried to watch I tried to catch up on the old stuff,
Yeah.
and it's bad. So I only got through like season 1.5. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's very
and then
much
I
90s
watched
kids
like
show.
I watched like a 40-minute recap
Yeah.
video, which and then they talked about how bad the animation is in that final season.
Mm.
And then I went back and started watching a little bit of that final season. I'm like, oh,
They're
yeah,
running out of money, right? I mean, like it's like watching like the old GI Joes, right? Like that stuff was like made for like $40 in like 4 hours each episode.
oh my god,
Like,
it's bad.
yeah.
And I love some of the. Well, we'll talk about it, the stuff on the show, but they're how they said that they had to like recreate some of the animation.
Yeah.
So to make it match, they actually had to like lower their quality a little bit to kind of like not
Yeah.
surpass it. And yeah, wow. Yeah. I haven't done any more research on this show. I really wanted to keep it as raw, as
Yeah, for sure.
spoiler free, because everyone was talking about it, but
People
yeah,
did a good job not giving stuff away though. Like, cause I definitely had heard a lot of buzz about it too. And boy, like it
yeah,
comes out hitting.
yeah, it does. It does
Comes out
like
hitting.
yeah. I mean, I knew what was coming because I'm an X-Men fan and I know where they're going in a way, but like I'm liking the changes. I'm liking
Yeah.
the changes, and that's what's good. That's what's good.
Well,
And so
it's cool too, and we'll talk about this too, but it's introducing characters and dynamics that are like that matter a lot to the current continuities, even if they're not the same stories. So it's like,
yeah.
ooh, I want to learn more about this person. Guess what?
Well,
And
what
a lot
I
of
also
cool
thought
stuff.
was interesting. You know what? Let's wait for the show. Let's recap a little bit on the news, and then
Yeah,
we'll hit X-Men. But let's run these credits, and then we'll go from there.
love it. Let's go.
Um, and I know how to do this. I know how to do. There it is. There it is. Whoa, where'd I go?
Oh,
There I am. There I am. I wonder what that was about.
yeah, that was wild.
Oh man. All right. Welcome back. Another episode, another week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's go.
It's go. We're gonna hit the ground running because we want to talk about the stuff that we want to talk about. And one of the things is gonna be X-Men 97 to be exact. That was just it really like it was good. It was so good.
Yes, sir.
But any news, anything, any recap, any stuff? I mean, this week has been kind of like I
Yeah,
have
I mean, it seems like
honestly,
most of like the stuff I've been seeing this week has been like some light like rumor milling stuff around, like Xbox handheld stuff that like we've seen before, and
yeah.
really it is pretty quiet though. I feel like we're in a little bit of like at least in the gaming world, a little bit of a lull anticipation for some of the stuff that's coming out soon.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I mean, my backlog, dude, it's just looking brutal right now.
Mm.
It's looking so brutal. There's so many games I want to get to, but I do not have the time.
I'll tell you this much: my backlog is taking a giant hit, and more so now that Diablo is on Game Pass because
Ooh,
I have put in many
yeah.
hours on Diablo 4, and but I will say, now mind you, this is I guess 9 months, 8 months since it launched.
Yeah, something like that.
June, I think, is when it launched. And Diablo 4, I waited. I didn't want to pay, the whole Blizzard Activision thing and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
I didn't want to have to like give them money at the moment. And now it's on Game Pass. I'm technically already giving them money. Back to 97.
We're going back to 97 tonight, baby.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are. So I loaded it up and I was like, let's try this out. And I immediately got pulled back in. It's like that Diablo fix, that story arc, that like style. And it was just like, man, I forgot how easy it is to play.
Yeah.
I yet at the same time, how frustrating it is to play because of like the min max
Mm,
mentality.
mhm,
You're sitting
mhm.
there like every piece of like gear that you pick up, you're like, ooh, it gives you this stat, but ooh, it's more armor, but at the same time, it gives you this and that. And then I don't know anything about these new characters.
Yeah.
I don't know anything how they play. So I started with a rogue right off the bat just to kind of
Okay.
like go
Is
with
that
like
like your default for this kind of thing
yeah, it's
usually?
my
Is that like your
yeah,
entry?
something that gives me like good attack. I feel
Mhm.
like I can still do range, but at the same time still come in and like but I will say so I'm about level 17, 18 right now.
Okay.
And I am at one of the first major bosses
Mhm.
and I am getting wiped constantly. Constantly.
Yeah.
Like frustratingly so. Like it has been
That's
a
tough.
long time since I've grabbed a controller and done the like just
Mhm.
like to grab it, like just hear the crunch of the plastic in your hand. Like it has been a while, and this has made me do it.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm enjoying it, but I definitely it was about 10 o'clock at night, like 2 nights ago, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna play this. I sat down, I got to this boss, and I started playing it.
Mhm.
And then I kept wiping over and over. And I'm like, one more run. And then I would
Yep.
teleport back to town and fix my armor, try to find whatever I can. I'm at a point where if I abandon this, I would have to go through the dungeon again or through the
Yep.
through the map again. So, but at the same time, I could
Like,
probably
don't wanna do
benefit.
that, but yeah.
I could benefit probably from like going a few side quests and maybe finding some better gear.
Yep.
Um, but at the same time, I'm like right at the boss, and
Right.
I'm getting so close to the end of the boss, but I wipe right at the end there. And I got the pattern down, I got the idea, but it's frustratingly hard. And I there's a part of me that's like, I'm just getting old. Like maybe I just suck. And I went
Yeah.
online and people were saying that it's actually hard, but then of course there's always going to be the like get good crowd, and I'm just like, okay, I don't know who to
So
believe
that's
anymore.
interesting. I mean, so I did pick it up when it came out, and I played it. I got through most of the campaign. I was playing a sorcerer, got through like
Okay.
I think like up until like the level like the like 40s, somewhere up in there. And like I know they've changed a lot in it since then. Like they're this kind of game that they're always updating and doing balance
So
changes
I
and
want to
stuff. So
say Diablo 3
yeah,
was really good because what they did is it was really a mouse and keyboard and PC game. And
yep,
the team that took that game and made it work on console did
mm,
such an amazing job
mhm,
that they've really adapted that play style to work now.
mm.
So I in my head, I would have never thought that a game like Diablo would work with a controller.
Yeah.
Yet
I mean,
it is my
it's
preferred method to play
yeah,
now.
it's great with it now. Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it has changed a ton since the Diablo 2 days and all the expansions and all that kind of stuff. So Diablo 3 was really console centric. There was a
Yep.
console version that played really well. The inventory system and the way you could change weapons and all that kind of stuff was really cool.
How are you
Um,
liking the like return to kind of the darker aesthetic? Because Diablo 3 was a little bit that like a little
yeah,
more colorful, and Diablo 4 definitely is much more back into that. Like we are bloody metal. Like we're dark.
yeah, it's dark. The storyline. I also am. I mean, again, I'm early in the story.
Yeah.
That I'm really liking the idea that yet again, like most Diablo, if you play it long enough, you know that there is no good side, bad side.
Yeah.
They're the light and the dark and whatever, but they're both complete assholes,
Yeah.
and
Oh
they're
yeah.
both horrible,
Yeah.
and they both sacrifice humanity. Humanity is just like stuck in the middle
Yes, pawns.
of they're just pawns in this
Yeah.
giant like but and maybe I'm not deep into the Diablo lore enough,
Yeah. No, me
but
neither.
so I'm almost positive that like Christianity's out of the picture in this, right? Like this is supposed to be like it's like Christianity-esque,
Yeah.
but everything's like the light and they use all of these they use a lot of names
Yeah.
like Christian angels and all that kind of stuff, but there is no
Totally.
reference to like actual Christianity. It is
Yeah.
like
No, not really. I mean,
yeah,
it's as far as I can tell now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
And
all like
and I kind of
iconography
like
and
that
sort of
because it
vibes.
allows them to kind of one kind of take turns. You can't
Yep.
guess it, or you can't like you can't you're not if you're not some sort of like religion scholar or something, you're not gonna like guess the things.
No, that's for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
It's neat. It's neat. I mean, so far the villain is one villain that you think, but I think there's obviously by the time where I'm at, you're realizing that this particular villain might not be the villain. There might be
Yeah.
more to the story, and
Yeah.
I'm really digging it. I'm glad it came out on Game Pass. I don't know if I would have paid for this.
Mm.
I, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I also, this is one of those games that makes me want to play with other people,
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
but I don't know how it works. Like,
If it's like drop in, drop out. Yeah, I'm not sure either, actually. That's a good point.
yeah,
We should give it a shot.
yeah, we should give it a shot. I mean, it's beautiful. I will say it scales really well.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know how it ran when it first launched, but at this point in time, it seems that I can play it pretty well on the ROG Ally,
Oh, nice.
100%, no problem, and because it's a Windows-based platform.
Yeah, yeah.
And at the same time, I have a mini PC with a Ryzen like 780M mobile thing, whatever. It's like a anyway. The point
Okay.
is it scales on that really well too, and so I've
Nice.
got that one hooked up to my TV as opposed to using my Xbox,
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
it's playing really well. I also know that it's crossplay, so if you've PC
Yeah.
and Xbox and all that can play all together, so that's also a big thing. I don't know. I haven't looked into if it's crossplay character wise,
That's
as
a
in
good question.
like
I'll have to pull my current or the campaign that I was playing back up and see because I played like the heck out of it for like the month after launch and then I sort of just like fell off of it. So I'll give that a shot and see if we can get the crossplay going based off of that.
yeah, for sure, for sure. What have you been playing lately?
So I've been I mean I've still been heavy into like Dragon Infinite Wealth. So I got about 25 hours into that and finally got to the Animal Crossing bit, Dundoko Island, and so I sunk a
Yeah, you were
good
telling me so about
8 hours into
20
that
about level
before getting that.
25 ish or
Not level 25, like 25 hours.
oh 25 hours.
Yeah, 25 hours into the game.
So
It
you're
was
telling
fun.
me you play 25 hours of this game and then
Uh-huh.
then it turns into a completely different game?
It doesn't turn into it just adds a game there if you want it. It's a game that comes with its own backlog. Like, because there's also a Pokemon game in it, like a full-fledged Pokemon. You can capture any of the enemies you play. There's over 120 to track. You can battle them in tournaments with other players. You're beating gym leaders. Meanwhile, very serious story about finding your mother and rescuing her from the Yakuza in Hawaii. Like it's unbelievable, man. Like I cannot believe this game. It's got me in its grips. I'm now about 33, 34 hours in. I've just left my island. It's like a resort that you're rebuilding
Yeah, yeah.
basically. And the way it works is you progress by getting visitors and increasing the status of your resort and building things and capturing fish and like it's all this different stuff that's very Animal Crossing-y. So I got my resort back up to a level 2. And I was like, okay, that took me like 5-6 hours to do. I'm gonna go back to the main story. So I go back to the main story, and then what happens is there's a roguelike in this game. There's a dungeon roguelike where you kind of do runs that are randomly generated. You collect items and you go and spend those items with a guy who makes a
This
second
is
game
ridiculous.
joke
Like
right off the top.
I can't even comprehend the idea of a game having that many types and then
Man,
and all the modes actually being good.
it's wild. I mean, like, I'm not sure if all of the modes, would survive as like a standalone game,
Mhm.
but they're all interesting and they all work. I mean, like, I'm not a huge Pokemon fan, right? I've played 2 Pokemon games in my whole life. Um, it's fun. It's like it's the same thing, dude. It's just like criminals and weird guys instead of little fun monsters. So I've been playing
I
that. That's been
Pokemon is
good.
one of those games where I played a lot of it early on,
Yeah,
but it also at the same time, like I feel like I've never been able to give it the time it deserves.
sure.
And I also it's one of those games that I there's a part of me deep within my soul that has like this FOMO of Pokemon.
Get that.
There's a side, there's like a little child version of me inside screaming, like, you
Yeah.
could be playing Pokemon right now and you would love it all, but you won't let it. You won't let it. And I'm just like, I don't need any more. I've got too much. I've got too much I love. Damn it. I don't need another obsession.
I mean, I'll
So
tell you this, if that is how you're feeling, you should definitely avoid Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth because
yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
game is
But
ridiculous.
that whole series, the whole Yakuza series, is also one of those series that says,
Totally.
"Come play me because you like Shenmue. You liked Shenmue.
Yep,
All of these are spiritual successors to that." And I'm like,
100%.
"Yes, I
And I gotta
do."
say, the main chunk of this game in terms of, like, the actual turn-based role-playing game is great. It works super, super well. they added this really interesting sort of like movement mechanic to the turn-based part of it, where depending on the attacks, you have a range of motion that you can move your character before you do the attack, which lets you set up proximity attacks. So like each character has a little bit of wiggle room basically on their turns that you can move them in real time to try and line up your shots that are the turn-based part a little bit better. And it's just a nice little wrinkle to the combat that I like. And then there's
what are the like I know the Yakuza series, especially this version of Yakuza,
Like a Dragon,
the Like a Dragon series, has always had. There's been really wacky side characters or partners that you can pick up. What's been your favorite so far that you picked up? I've seen the chicken. Like I know that you could like pick up this chicken and like
so
like a luchador masked chicken or something, or like
I don't have a chicken yet. I've got a suite of 4. One of them is the protagonist from the other part of the Yakuza, Kiryu. He's in it. He's cool. He's cool as hell. I love him. The other guy's a taxi driver who's a bilingual Japanese American. Who he's just kind of like really insecure. Honestly, the writing's super, super good. It's like it's this super interesting balance between like goofy cornball stuff and then like really heartfelt like friendship and connection. It's a great game. I mean, I really can't say enough about it right now. It's good stuff. The thing that's wacky is I also, when I got about 20 hours in, I would say the game unlocks its job system, like its class system for your RPG characters. And so now I can get different jobs for each different person, which totally changes all of their abilities. And those are a little wacky. So like,
yeah, the game turns into Final Fantasy Tactics very quickly.
Final Fantasy Tactics, and you go from being a gangster to now I'm playing my guy. The job I have him lined up as is he's a fire dancer. So he's got like little tonga loincloth on and some fire maracas, and he's going to town. It's great.
I fucking love
it. Great stuff, man.
I just love it.
And so I've been playing that. And then on the sly at night, what I've been getting on is Cobalt Core, which has been nice. I've been enjoying that.
Cobalt, really? Okay. So I'm guessing the AFK journey didn't last very long.
Oh, no, that's still going.
That's is it?
Going. Yeah, okay. I'm checking out on that twice a day. That and Marvel Snap. I'm always checking out those guys right now. Yeah.
How are you liking AFK Journey? So anyone who's not familiar with AFK Journey, this is an interesting like concept of a game. Like it's a what is it?
It's a gacha game.
It's a gacha game, right? But it's also like, is it free to play? I didn't even know if it was. Yeah, it's a free to play.
It's basically just if you've played any idle games, like IDLE, right? It's a style of game where, or if you played like clicker games, like Cookie Clicker back in the day, like those kinds of things. Basically, you're just trying to make numbers go up. And when you get new abilities, there are abilities that help you make numbers go up more efficiently. And in these kinds of games, these idle games, they go up while you're not playing it. And so what you're doing while you're playing it is trying to get abilities that make it go up faster when you don't play it. And like it's based around like all the kind of predatory monetary stuff of just like getting you to gamble on getting the best characters to do all those things. I'm not doing any of that. Basically, I'm just playing it because the art style is amazing. It looks super nice. Like it's like if you saw that Netflix animated movie last year, Nimona, it reminds me a lot of that. It's got this kind of cool quasi 3D Disney animation vibe that I just think is super attractive. The writing is terrible. The characters are not like anything. It's not doing any lore building, like world building really of any kind. But it looks great, and it's like a nice little thing to just like leave running while I'm at work.
Yeah, this is the launch trailer that they launched during PAX East.
So this is a sequel, right? AFK Arena was the game before it, and that was extremely popular. And if you watched any on YouTube, you probably saw a bunch of ads with it, along with like Raid Shadow Legends or whatever.
Yeah.
But this, it's just like cool character designs, cool environments. There's some light sort of RPG elements of like exploring a world, but mostly it's just about making numbers go up and watching your dudes do the battle. Like if you played like any auto chess stuff, like Dota's auto chess, the battles are kind of like that.
Yeah, the art style in this is really cool. I dig the I always in my head it's like the no outline watercolor art.
Yeah,
it's because there is no separation, like there is no visible line separation between every layer, every bit. It's just very fluid and very watercolory.
Yeah,
the palette's very pleasing.
I could not tell you what it's about. Basically, the only stuff that I've been doing at this point, story wise, is there's like a farm and there's a rich guy who's trying to burn the farm down. And he framed somebody else. I don't know what anybody's motivations are. It does not matter. It's like it's totally peripheral to the experience. But I
Interesting.
mean, basically, it's like a little moving animated painting I pull up and watch numbers go up on sometimes, and that's about it.
And it's available on like everything, right? It's a mobile game
Oh,
and
yeah,
everything, right? Yeah,
I'm playing it on iOS, but
yeah.
so I mean that's goofy. It's a little time waster, but I enjoy it. It's working for me right now. I'll probably
Yeah,
drop
no,
it in
I
a couple
mean,
weeks.
like I'm done with it. But yeah, no, it looks good. I mean, I've heard good things about it, but you're right, it is kind of a gotcha game. So it's like one of those, like, it depends on what type of game player you are and how susceptible you are to that
They had a
style of
big
game.
display at PAX East. I don't know if you saw that.
Well, yeah, I know they were everywhere, and so
Yeah.
like the art style kept catching my eye, but I was like, do I need another game to kind of like dump time into? And then you were like, you messaged me, you're like, I'm gonna give it a try. I was like, really? Interesting. Yeah. Okay. All right.
It does not seem to be the kind of game for me, anyways, that like you just can't stop playing because there's no loop to it. It's just like you make numbers go up, you let it go, you check in on it. I think it's kind of thing where like if it sustains my attention, it will sustain it just over a long period of time.
Well, isn't that the name of the game is exactly that, right? Like away from keyboard. Yeah, AFK. So it's like you play a little bit, then you walk away, and the idea is like it does things on its own.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. So, here, I gotta share.
That's smart.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, it's smart. One real quick thing I wanted to share with you from the Like a Dragon. I'm just gonna share my screen real quick. This is a screenshot I took. This is my character, Ichiban Kasuga, talking to the gentleman that guards the roguelike dungeon, who's a mascot, a robot. And his problem is he can't run for very long without a cord, so he can't help you out. And he's complaining about that. And how he complains about it is to ask you if you're familiar with the Game Gear, the iconic portable entertainment device released by the Sega Corporation in 1991, featuring such classic titles as Defender of Oasis and Sonic Drift 2.
I love it.
He goes on to explain that the Game Gear couldn't run on batteries for longer than 15 minutes either, and he's quite like that one.
Now, let's see who the director of Defenders of Oasis was.
Yeah, that's a good call. I honestly had never heard of that one. I had a Game Gear that was not on my list. Defenders of Oasis, amazing.
Oh man, yeah, of course, yeah. I remember this game. Wow, yeah, it's an RPG. It's very much so based on 1001 Nights. Yep.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Genre. Who's the developer? Sega. Does it show me?
I can't see anything about like who directed it.
Who's the creator of this game? Developed and released. Yeah, I don't know who the. Usually, when they do stuff like that, it has a lot to do with the fact that like, oh, it's probably the same director or.
I mean, I will say the Yakuza Like a Dragon games are just like constantly reminding you that they're published by Sega. Like they love like
but
their Sega bona fides out there. There's a lot of Sega games you can play inside of this game.
Right, you go to the arcades and play all the old Sega games, and so that's always been one of those things.
Yeah. It's great. It's a great game. Thoroughly enjoying it.
Awesome. I'm excited for games like that, and I love the fact that there's that much like value in the game. For sure.
So yeah. I'm guessing it's going to be an 80-90 hour game for me.
Awesome. Yeah. So let's talk about good writing. And
I would love to.
And let's go ahead and play the best intro ever made. On the best intro ever made.
Yeah,
and it's not the American version.
Oh, interesting. Okay, what are we checking out here?
No, it's not the American version. The Japanese, and I've played this on the show before, the Japanese version of the X-Men animated series was phenomenal. If you've never seen it, have you ever seen this?
I don't know that I've seen it. So
the Japanese intro to X-Men that is always good.
I mean, this is already extremely sick. Hell yeah.
The ninja scroll. Here, watch. With the moon.
Was that Red Omega?
Yeah.
Or Omega Red?
Yeah, Omega Red. Yeah.
I mean, no doubt that riff.
Oh man, that is a great intro.
That absolutely rips.
That it absolutely does. And unlike the American version, of X-Men, who only had one intro, the Japanese, just like everything, always has a different season. So they had a second intro. So that was the season 1 that you watched, and the season 2 one. Oh, these are the in between commercial.
Oh sure, yeah, like the stingers.
The stingers between.
Yeah.
And then the
Dude, that Jean Grey looks unbelievable.
I know.
X-Men.
Damn.
I don't know about you, but this would have blown my little mind as a kid. This version of the intro.
Yeah. I mean, it's blowing my mind a little bit right now. It is so unlike the animation of that actual series. Like, that's unbelievable. That must have been a shot. I mean, if you can get the work, my guy, I would say, yeah, dude.
Oh, here we go. I love this. Classic anime, like.
Oh, dude, yeah. Just perfect love triangle framing with the galaxy. Are you kidding me?
So cliche. I love it.
They drew Apocalypse like a kaiju. That was amazing. Wow. Right? Yeah, I would buy merch from that for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Anywho, now that I've played that,
yeah.
X-Men 97, man, holy crap. Like, let's talk, because
so I would say, first of all, up front, a little bit of spoiler warning, guys, right? We're gonna be talking the first 3 episodes of X-Men 97. So if you don't want to know anything at all, I guess, just be careful.
Watch later. I'm not going to tell you not to watch. You should watch
only the first 3 episodes.
Yeah, but only the first 3 episodes. As a matter of fact, I'm not even going to talk about what's going on, Dan. I'm not even going to talk about the second half of the 3rd episode, because I haven't finished it. But I know. But 2.5 episodes is where I'm at, and it is. So let me preface this.
Let's set the stage.
Let's set the stage here. So the original X-Men cartoon ran for, I want to say, 5 seasons. Is what I think it was.
Yeah, 92 to 97.
92 to 97. And along those 5 seasons, it went through 3 different animation studios. The original one for season 1, season 2 to season 4, and then the season 5 animation was completely different altogether. Mind you, they're all very similar, but the animation from season What's going on, you chicken? Yeah, so the season 5 animation was really badly done. It was
Yep.
really poor. The budget had gone down. They knew they were on their way out. They wanted to kind of end the story. I don't even remember watching season 5. It was one of those times where 1997 was kind of a weird time for cartoons in general. A
Yep.
lot of major channels were, it was the end, it was the death throes of Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah.
Most
I mean, a lot of those networks were in transition. The internet was hitting, like
yeah, the
really
internet
actually
was kind of a
hitting.
thing, and it was just kind of like a time where I think Fox was one of the only ones that really had a Saturday morning block. ABC, NBC, CBS had really
Yep.
cut it. If not, they only had like a really early, like 7, 8 a.m. like block. And then after that, it was like some educational. And then it maybe went to like golf and stuff like that. It was always something like a sport thing. Like Saturdays was always like college
Yeah.
football or something like that. And then,
I mean,
yeah,
that
and
was
then
like the sweet spot for me, I think, for Saturday morning cartoons. And like ABC was still doing, they were just getting some of Nickelodeon's leftovers from like
right,
97 to
right, right,
2000. Like Doug shifted from Nickelodeon to ABC around that
right,
time
because
into the early
the Doug
2000s.
franchise was purchased by Disney,
Yep.
and
Yeah. Yep.
so Disney started, they threw kind of a small Disney block
Yep.
early on
But
in the
a lot of that
morning.
wouldn't really hit until the early 2000s. So
Yeah,
97 was like a weird, you're right. Like it was like you had some stuff on Fox, but like the golden era of like those like later golden era, like Recess and Doug and all that on that Saturday morning wouldn't hit until like 2002, 2003.
Dan, I'm that guy. I never. I think early on I realized that I never really wanted to let go of cartoons. So I always watched them. Like it
Yeah.
didn't matter how old I never. There was always a part of me, and that's kind of why I am who I am now, right? Like it makes it where I have never said to myself, "Oh, cartoons are too old," and I always made some time to sit down and watch some cartoons. Mind you, I probably didn't watch as many as I probably would have liked to, because
Sure.
adolescence and whatever else, and you're too busy and whatever.
You
But
got homework, man.
you got homework, and you're like you're going out, you're on good dates and girls and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff, and
sure. Got a
sports
nice
and all
little
that stuff kind of
Saturday
kick in.
job.
Yeah, whatever. Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, Animaniacs, man, for sure. And again, that's the next part is the WB kind of
Yeah.
syndicated the UPN became WB, which became, and then the WB had a morning block, and so Fox and WB both had a Saturday morning, afternoon block of cartoons for a very long time. At the same time, the transition of Gen X getting older, millennials coming into age, and the internet coming in, the Gen X crowd was really and the early millennials were really the cartoon age. And I
Sure.
guess advertisers and all that kind of stuff, regulations changed, all that kind of stuff of like toys and merchandise. The big 80s boom of like
Yep.
toy and merchandise matching didn't work
That was
very
the
much
big thing,
anymore.
right? Like, you no longer had the cartoons that were just clearly selling GI Joes,
Right.
right? Or
Right.
like, or whatever else. Because like we had, like I can remember growing up. So my era for that would have been like late '90s to early 2000s, when because I was in high school in 2002 through 2006, and so like that era and before, it's more original stuff that you're not getting action figures from, right? It's like no one has a like Spinelli from Recess action figure.
Right.
Like
Right.
that's
Well,
the
I mean,
issue
you
there.
say that, but then like you just threw it out into the ethos, and now
I
there's
mean,
going to be
now
like
we should have that.
yeah, there's 100% one now. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
It just ended. It
Yeah.
just ended on Hulu. Like the final season just ended. They did one more season, and so it just ended. But it
Yep.
was good.
Yeah, they did a
It
good
made
job.
it did
I
a good
agree.
job. I think they said what they wanted to say, and I think they ended on their own terms. I think it was nice that they were able to kind of like, they make a lot of jokes about how it's like they're going back into like the water tower or whatever else, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
But
but
now it's 2024
yeah,
and
and the
Disney
age of
has
Saturday morning
returned.
cartoons
Oh yeah,
is long dead.
long
But
gone. We're
now
just watching YouTube unboxing videos now.
us, my generation, are in our 40s, and we have expendable income, and we have jobs in marketing and jobs in management and CEO jobs,
Yeah.
and we say, here, the stuff that we like needs to come back. And we have X-Men 97, which was announced almost 2 years ago, actually, a while ago, and it was in production for a very long time. and it was always kind of like this: is it going to be any good? Can you really continue this version of X-Men? And again, before I even get into what we're going to talk about here, I have to really talk about the elephant in the room here that is X-Men.
Yeah.
X-Men has really been completely out of the Marvel limelight for years.
Yep.
If you're a comic fan, it's never left your zeitgeist. It's never left your like. But if you're not into comics, there's hardly any major X-Men merchandise out there. As a matter of fact, the only character you might see is maybe Wolverine. You'll see him on a T-shirt with like with other Marvel's mainstays. They did nothing to Rogue. Her butt is still there. Watch the show. Yes. They did nothing. That's bull. As a matter of fact, I'm loving. We'll talk about that narrative in a little bit. But yeah. So the idea here is I've been looking through my like T-shirt collection, as a geek does. I go through and I hit the button on my like my Batman like wardrobe that spins in every color of the rainbow with multiple geek T-shirts, rolls on this like conveyor belt. And I went through and I was like, I'm gonna pick out an X-Men shirt for tonight, and I couldn't find a single one. I had like, I want to say I have at least 20-ish, 25-ish Marvel shirts.
Sure.
But they're all in the recent years. And man, like the MCU and what is the live action has really dictated what the merchandise is.
Yeah.
I have 3 Black Panther shirts. Jordan. Like I can't even imagine like 20 years ago thinking that Black Panther would have been something that would have been merchandise.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I mean, that's cool.
Yeah.
I have Thor, I have Captain America, I have Iron Man, I have Spider-Man, I have Venom, I have tons of them. I have multiple Avengers shirts. I have retro style shirts with the Avengers and like multiple characters like Spider-Man and stuff like that on it. But none of them have Wolverine or the X-Men or anything like that. And the only one I could find was a fan one, which was this one right here, which is a Capcom. It's a Capcom versus a Capcom versus Marvel T-shirt, which I love.
It's a good one,
but it's a fan base one because you can't really find it now. So what I'm trying to say is there's a reason for that, and the reason for that was Fox. Disney really did not own X-Men. They did; they've always owned them. But when it comes down to like movies and what makes money, the millions of dollars that is the cinema and the box office, they had no control over what was being made. And so with that said,
as a result, what we got is basically 4 blocks of X-Men movies, right? Since the 2000s. And so we have that first block, which was like the Bryan Singer block, right?
Yeah, 1, 2, and 3.
1, 2, and 3. 1 was like, if you go back and watch it right now, that I think it was a 2000 film. It's a little rough. Like you can tell we have not figured out like superhero like storytelling in this way yet.
Not only that, we didn't want to make superheroes. Like we wanted to make superheroes, but we wanted to like not make them superheroes.
Yeah. Right. We wanted them to be like very grounded and sort of like gritty. I still think X-Men 1 when it came out was definitely like it was a bit of a phenomenon.
Oh yeah. And like
no
doubt.
It was along with Spider-Man 1, like very much a huge kind of thing to drop. X2 is really well like I think received. I love X2. That's still one of my favorite superhero movies. And then kind of Last Stand, everyone was like, no, thank you. And then so after that, we got our second block, right? The Wolverine movies, which was like Wolverine Origins, the Wolverine,
and to preface that, the one continuity thing that never changed, actor, everything, is
Hugh Jackman.
Wolverine never stopped being Wolverine,
which people hated when he got casted as Wolverine.
Well, I mean, he was too tall. He's too tall.
Not Canadian.
Not Canadian.
But I mean, you're right. He was like the through line. He was the bankable star that Fox kept going to the well for. And then they finally were like, all right, we're going to move away from that. Logan was this really interesting, like, okay, we're doing something really different, super hardcore R-rated film about like aging and death. Very good, but definitely different from the rest of the X-Men films. And then we got the prequel movies. We got First Class, we got Days of Future Past, Apocalypse, and Dark Phoenix. I really liked First Class. I didn't love Days of Future Past. And then Apocalypse and Phoenix were rough.
Yeah, those last two are rough. The third one, Apocalypse, I don't even remember watching Apocalypse.
It has Oscar Isaac in it. Do you remember that?
He is Apocalypse.
Crazy? He's Apocalypse.
I completely forgot that.
Yeah, totally out of the memory.
Days of Future Past is really good.
Yeah.
The only thing that like to this day drives me absolutely bananas is the fact that they kill the one character that is 100% unkillable.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
He's unkillable.
Our boy Darwin.
Darwin.
Yep.
If any of y'all are familiar, Darwin, the character, he gets killed
Yeah.
by who did Kevin Bacon play?
I can't remember the guy's name.
I forget his name. He's head of the society. The anywho, the point is he dies, and he dies in a way that's impossible. Like the mutant power that is Darwin is that he cannot die because he will always evolve past the death. So like if you manage to kill him, his body will go, oh, I died. Hold on. Let me just rearrange myself, and now I can never die like that again. Not only that, I will be surpassed that. And it's crazy how powerful he's like, beyond written. Like he's Deus Ex Machina of like mutant. Like that's his purpose, right?
And so what we had then with those two last ones, Apocalypse and Phoenix, is we basically were like, okay, I guess we're done with X-Men in movies, right? And so since then, we've been kind of sidling up to X-Men with the Deadpool films, right?
Right. And almost like a joke.
We're getting jokes about it.
We're getting jokes about like the first one. I love the hey, this budget. It's almost like you can only afford one X-Men at a time. And I love the closing the door with all the X-Men behind the door. Like I love that.
And so this is all basically one big wind up to like, all right, what do we do with a new X-Men cartoon? How is it? Like, does it work? And man,
boy, does it work.
I think it works.
Not only does it work, I didn't realize how much I needed this.
Howdy.
What's going on, man? I didn't know how much I needed this X-Men cartoon until I started watching it, and boy, is it so good. Look, if you're not familiar with the X-Men and familiar with what they stand for and the whole allegory of the X-Men, I mean, they are 100% a comic written by Stan Lee and others, all about the civil rights movement. It is all about bigotry, all about oppression, all about, all of that. It has always been about that. Not only has it always been about that, the original cartoon in the 90s was about that.
100%.
I saw someone put it up, and I would have to look online to find the picture. I have my original like Pizza Hut VHS cassettes.
Oh, nice.
That were like episode 1 and 2, like, or the first few episodes on tape that they gave you. And on the back of the cassette tape, it's like, if you were to read that right now and post that online about the synopsis, everyone would be like, oh God, you've gone woke. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
You have a bunch of screaming mad people
like,
online.
What are you talking about? That's the entire purpose.
That's the whole game, the whole time.
Anyone who says that the X-Men or whatever have gone woke, and that even using the word, you have no idea what you were watching. Silly. You missed the entire point of the X-Men.
Yeah, it's silly.
Like right off the bat, you missed the entire point. And boy, do they like really come down hard and let you know that this is the cartoon that we needed right now. But
I mean,
so lead us into episode 1, man. Like,
yeah, dude. So basically, this series is meant to pick up right where the old continuity left off. It's like,
so what happened? What happened in the last episode of the prequel?
And where we left off is Professor Xavier is dead, right? Like that's where the old cartoon left off. So we're hitting the X-Men at their most vulnerable, right? There's always this conflict, right, in the X-Men stories about will humanity and mutants coexist, right? And that was Professor X's dream, and he was always going after that, and Magneto always opposing that, talking about like mutant dominance. And so in episode 1, we have a sort of world where like some of Professor X's dream is coming to fruition, but there's a faction that really doesn't want that to happen on the human side because they hate mutants. And then there's factions on the mutant side that really don't want that to happen either. And in the middle, you've got the X-Men without their leader trying to figure out what's going on. And so what's great about that setup is it immediately lets us get into some great character stuff about those X-Men. So they
not only that,
and fantastic.
Yeah, and not only that, what's so great so far has been the writing that it is not. I mean, there's still some cheese factor of the 90s.
Sure. Yeah.
A lot of like
a fair amount of cheese factor.
A fair amount of it. A lot of over exposition, like the constant use of the powers and like Storm, for example, all her pontificating and all that. But it's so beautiful to see. And but at the same time, the writing is definitely upped its game and its level of like it is being written for us, because there is actual conflict and actual like adult thought going into this.
Oh yeah, yeah,
The
really
the
clearly.
idea right at the bat, like you said, with Professor Xavier gone, who will lead the X-Men? And it's a world that really can't say, oh well, he's gone, and he became kind of a martyr in a way
Yep,
for humanity and mutant kind. And that's why there is this like peace now, this
yeah,
UN kind of working with the X-Men. There's like a liaison kind of thing,
yep.
and all of that. And Scott is like feeling this like weight on his shoulders of
Cyclops,
like,
for the uninitiated.
yeah, yeah,
Scott
yeah.
Summers.
For the Scott Summers, Cyclops, who he's like, I have to lead this I have to lead these X-Men.
Yep.
And so he doesn't know how to do it. He's a little brash. He's a little like, heavy. And
He's a
then
sad soon to be dad, right? He's got that like
right,
I
so
just don't
that's
know
the
how to make
big
this work
twist.
things.
Right off the bat, you see, and I mean, Jean Grey walks out
Yep.
onto frame, and she's pregnant.
Yeah, like
And
scene
I'm
one.
like, yeah, scene one.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa, what's going on? What happened here? Like,
Yeah.
what happened? This is what we wanted, because this
Yeah.
happens in the comic.
Yep.
But it probably would have never, you could have never done this in the 90s on the cartoon, been like, wait a minute, how are babies made? What happened? What did Scott and Jean do? I don't understand.
That's
So
interesting. I'll have to think about that as I watch more of this show, because I think when you watch a show like this that's so clearly rooted in an older aesthetic and an old storyline, it invites you to be like, man, how would we have told the story back then? Because it's not just that. Like, there's a lot of things in these first few episodes that are like, that's intense as hell. Holy
yeah,
God. I don't
yeah,
remember watching cartoons that were this intense.
yeah.
It's amazing.
There,
Whoa.
there is a moment in that, and I'm not gonna spoil it until we talk about it. But the second episode where I well up, like I'm like, holy
Oh,
crap! Like
Whitney too.
I feel the pain. Like I totally get it. I get this. And
Yeah.
yeah.
So here
So
was my favorite thing about episode 1.
go for it.
So episode 1, the basic storyline is, other than just trying to introduce us to everybody, is there is a rich kid, a rich mutant has been kidnapped, and so the X-Men need to go and rescue this rich kid who's been kidnapped, and that's sort of like our first like scene of action, is this rescue. And the kid is Sunspot, which I'm very
Yeah, that's
excited
what I'm
about
saying. It
because I
was
love
it
Sunspot.
Sunspot. It
Yeah, it
was
was definitely
Sunspot, right?
Sunspot. Yeah, oh
Definitely
yeah.
Sunspot.
Which is super cool. But he's a kid who's coming into his mutant powers. Like a lot of these origin stories for the X-Men, he's afraid of like talking to his parents about it. He doesn't want to be shunned. And the main focus character from the X-Men on this is Jubilee, right? Coming in and sort of supporting that, which is how the original series opened up.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Jubilee coming into her
That
powers and them rescuing
wonderful.
her and them all. And I was like, ah! That was so
good.
pumped about it, man.
What was interesting is the flip here is Jubilee was a foster kid who
Yes.
was kind of on the streets and really wasn't like,
Yeah.
she was wanted but not wanted.
Yes.
And then the flip side is here's this mutant kid
Yeah.
who's been kidnapped and then now like being saved by the X-Men, but
Right.
is well off. Not only is he well off, apparently he's like stupid rich.
Oh yeah, like yacht rich.
Like yeah,
Yeah.
did you want this? I'll just buy them all for you, kind of
Yeah.
rich. Like,
Yeah.
and so that's the flip side of the coin, is like this kid doesn't feel like he needs technically family until he
Right.
does. Like now he's realizing it.
Right.
But yeah, so
no, it's cool. I just love that, because it's the kind of thing when you like really respect the source material that you do, right? Where it's
Yeah.
like, that was such an interesting theme. We want to bring that in. We're recontextualizing it. We're giving it something different, but we're also giving that character someone to interact with in that way too. I think Jubilee is such a cool, underused character. I love Jubilee, always have loved Jubilee. And like seeing her get like center stage in that first episode was really exciting to me too. Yeah, just a great way to kick it off. And then the whole episode wraps up with them going after and I always get his name wrong. Is it Bolivar Trask?
yeah,
Bolivar
Trask. Yeah, Trask. Yeah, for sure.
Like he's the guy behind the Master Mold Factory, making all the big Sentinels that hunt them.
And if for anyone who wants to remember, this is what Sunspot looks like. He's got like he's basically kind of like a Human Torch character in a way. He can control, but he gets like really hot, like literally a sunspot. Like
he's like in like he's Brazilian,
Mhm.
DaCosta, Robert or Roberto DaCosta.
Yep.
He's also a great one cost drop in Marvel Snap. Is one of my favorite cards. But yeah, so the episode, that first episode, culminates in just like such a nice, like, let's watch these awesome characters with their super unique powers interact in a really fun way battle.
Yeah.
And they just hit all the right notes in that battle against the Sentinels. You get Gambit charging up Wolverine's claws. You get Cyclops like using the concussive blast to like float in from like the plane where I was like, oh,
Love
it's
it,
so
love it, love
good.
it, love it.
It's just
Oh,
like
so good. Yeah, it was so good. That whole battle scene was great. You really got that like moment of like, here are the X-Men again, folks. Let me
yeah,
show you all of their powers, and they really got to flex their powers a little bit. You got Storm in a way that we've like animation just wasn't at the level that it
no, it was
was,
not.
and now I mean she's like full on like animation Disney money
Yeah,
animation moment
full
of like
goddess.
yeah full goddess really and there's a reason for that, right? Like there are reasons showing you Storm's like power, her
Yep.
goddessness, like her level is beyond. I mean,
They even call it out verbally, right?
they're
It's
like
like Omega
Omega
threat
level,
detected.
Omega threat detected. And for those unfamiliar, again with the whole like X-Men, like there is a level of power level of mutation,
Yeah.
and there are certain mutants that are considered Omega level. Basically, they are top tier godlike. Like there is no one more powerful in this, and not only that, their mutation is, I guess in the genetic sense, it would be almost like a perfect mutation in a
Yeah.
way. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
the higher level of mutation. Cyclops is technically an Omega. Storm is an Omega.
Yeah, there's not many.
There's not many. A lot of the original cast actually are considered Omega, like Bobby Drake,
Yeah, Drake,
Iceman,
Bobby Drake, Jean Grey,
Jean Grey,
Magneto.
Magneto. Yeah, pretty much the original cast is considered Omega level, and that's because they were kind of the early core, but they made sure that their mutations were very rooted in like this is the reason why they were chosen or whatever.
Yeah,
And now everyone is kind of an offshoot, and also why they're leaders, right?
yeah, yeah. I could not agree more, astronaut. Like that was my sort of like scream at the television moment.
Yeah,
Was when
yeah. Well, it's
everybody else
also
is like
like
figuring out how to fly down, and it's just like,
well, I love it
it's
because
so good.
he so the scene is they get attacked and the you know the blackbird explodes as they do because they've got like a billion of them sitting in like a garage somewhere because
Yeah,
somehow or another that poor ship, someone's got to be a mutant out there that just like recreates it constantly for him, because I can't imagine what
their own
what an
masterful
SR1 costs like
SR-71. Yeah,
an
yeah, yeah,
SR-71. But my point is everyone kind of like explodes out of it, and so everyone has like the flying mutants are like Storm and Rogue,
yep,
and they kind of come in and pick up who they can, and then you've got ones like Morph
yep.
who can
He morphs
morph
into
into,
something that can
into
fly.
something that can fly, and then you've got other ones that are like using certain like abilities to fly,
Yep.
and then Wolverine is just like, I'm gonna fall because I'm Wolverine, it doesn't matter anyway. And Cyclops is like, no one goes and helps Cyclops because
Yeah.
he's like, you see the smirk on his face, like, good job, X-Men, see you on the ground, he says. And he just like, this moment is just so well done. He's like, he just kind of like puts himself into like a straight down to the ground,
Yeah.
like bullet form, and uses his optic blast to just like whoosh and just
Yeah.
push himself off, which again, in recent years we have learned and really written him properly that Cyclops' powers are not energy blasts,
Not a laser.
not a laser. They are
Concussive.
concussive. They are kinetic energy concussive. Like they are basically punches
Yeah.
out of his eyes.
Yep. It's
He
so good.
can focus them to
Yep.
cut, but they are not technically like cutting lasers. He has to actually do that. And
What I love about this too is I feel like the version of Cyclops that we got in the movies that most people are familiar with the X-Men through. I like James Marsden. I think he's a great Cyclops. He's kind of a whiny little annoying dude, especially compared to Hugh Jackman's Wolverine.
yeah,
The
I
contrast is
know. The
not in
contrast is
like
not,
Cyclops' favor in those movies.
they're
And so
not.
for
Cyclops gets a
me,
bum rap because in the
that's what I'm
comics,
saying. For me in the comics and in the old animated series, I loved Cyclops. Cyclops was my dude.
I mean,
And
Cyclops was
so
always
ah,
like in the 90s, depending on what kind of person you were,
yeah.
Cyclops is the Boy Scout. He
Yep.
is the I listen to dad because dad is right.
Yeah.
Mind you, as the character of Cyclops progresses in the
Yeah.
comic and whatever, there are moments of defiance and
Oh,
him
he
going
wrestles with
against
it, right? Yeah.
wrestles with it. Like, is Professor X correct? Is his vision sound? And
Right.
in the comic, they even go further. I mean, there have been story arcs where Cyclops is considered the villain for a while.
Well, and it's
And
clear
then,
we're going to be getting into some of that in this show.
yeah, so we're getting there. So,
So how does
episode
episode
one
one
happens.
end?
episode 1 ends right on that one thing that we saw in the trailer, is that Magneto is in the mansion.
Yeah.
He shows up. He's sitting in the office of Professor Xavier with the last will and testament, and Professor X left all of it, the school, the money, everything, to Magneto, and that like really chaps Scott for a little bit.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But there's I like that they don't linger on it too much, because at this moment, like we mentioned earlier,
I would say absolutely not. Just jump right in, my guy.
No, I would say you don't have to. There are some pretty good. I tried to, as I mentioned earlier in the show, I tried to watch, and I couldn't, because the animation was pretty bad and the story kind of gets a little silly. But the actual like through line, like story arc was always there. It was just kind of hard to follow. There are some great YouTube.
Yeah, watch a summary on YouTube if
Yeah,
you want.
there was one actually that constantly comes up that you can look for it. It's like all of X-Men explained in 38 minutes. And it's like a 38-minute like recap that tells you everything and everything you need to know. And that got me caught up again after I went back and watched like a season and a half. And I was like, that's exactly what I needed.
I mean, I would say, like, my partner did not watch the old animated series, has watched the X-Men movies, but does not read comics, able to hop into this and immediately love it. So
yeah.
I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, the only thing, and again, before we move on to episode 2 real quick, one of the fun things about episode 1 was there was a lot of Easter eggs for the fans. There is a scene that I thought was absolutely wonderful, where, you know, Morph is, you know, he's back with the X-Men. If you remember that most of the original series was Morph was like dead, not dead, captured by Mr. Sinister, experimented on, Apocalypse, and then eventually he became part. But he was like, he is a character that has like gone through trauma, and that's why his face is not his human face anymore. He uses like this kind of plastique look face, because his human face is so like sunken in, and like he's been
some things. Absolutely.
He's literally been tortured, and so he uses comedy as a way to kind of like project himself. But his fighting ability is Morph isn't just a shapeshifter. He can literally replicate a lot of their like powers to a degree. Obviously not to the level, but enough to like, if he makes himself look like Colossus, for example, his skin is strong like Colossus for a while. So there's a moment in combat.
Pause on that. Morph did not transfer to any of the popular culture stuff at all. And I think it's because we have Mystique. And we just didn't want two characters with really similar powers. And it's a bummer because Morph's a super interesting character for all the reasons that you talked about.
Yep, that's exactly it. And that's where I'm getting at, is there's a scene where they're fighting and Morph comes in and he's fighting with the rest of the X-Men to protect, you know, this character. And he shifts into all these different mutants, villains and heroes. And some of them I actually don't even remember seeing in the cartoon. He turns into certain characters that we've never really seen in animated form. And what's really cool about that is they also reference things. They talk about like, oh, we were the original members, and on the wall they've got like a portrait of Professor Xavier with all of the X-Men, you know, around him in that old classic, you know, late 70s style with the snowball looking Iceman and Beast,
like not fuzzy Beast.
The not fuzzy Beast and all that kind of stuff. And I don't remember them ever referencing that in the cartoon.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, the ones in episode 2, which we'll get to in a second, that he changes it. We get Lady Deathstrike, I think, is there. We see Colossus. We see Psylocke.
Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, if Psylocke was in the show, I don't remember it. She might have been in the background, but I just don't remember her.
And there's more in episode 3 too. I think they're gonna keep like doing this in like some pretty interesting ways.
That's so good. Like it's so good, and it's for the fans. It's for the fans of the comic and X-Men alike. And what I think what they're trying to say is X-Men 97, this cartoon is a continuation of the cartoon, but it also is like, hey, by the way, all of that old 90s comic X-Men knowledge that existed. This happened in between all of this.
I mean, it just feels like it was made by people that love it.
Yeah.
And like you can, it's so nice to watch something that like clearly the people that made it like really, really loved it.
So Magneto's back at the end of first episode, and he's not wearing his Magneto. He's wearing a very specific Magneto.
Oh, he's looking like a regular Harlequin romance freaking heroine.
Well, really, he's got a very
gorgeous
specific
hair.
He's got the long white hair. He's got the old. It is comic accurate. It is a purple suit with a big white M and long gloves that go up to his like elbow.
Looking
And
jacked, I might say.
yeah, it looked. Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that, again, what's interesting about Magneto is, I think they've mentioned on the reason why he can do this is like his magnetism and like the way he can control his age and whatever else. Like he can stay younger longer because of like I don't know some MacGuffin that they wrote in his powers.
Yeah.
But this is a guy that apparently was in the Holocaust. He was tortured in the Holocaust, but yet here he is, jacked.
Yeah.
In modern society. And obviously this is supposed to be like the late 90s, 97, because there was actually even a kid with like a Walkman with like a tape player.
Oh yeah, there's tons of like 90s references.
So that's all there. So but yeah, here he is, jacked and very, very sexy looking.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he's part of the X-Men at this point, and he's like, I'm going to follow the dream of Professor Xavier. I was wrong, or I don't agree 100%, but I can't let his dream die.
Yeah.
And also, like I said, where the writing kind of gets very dark, or not dark, but deep and more adult in the good way, like deeper writing, is the fact that they talk a little bit more about the love that Professor Xavier had for Eric. How he says there's this moment where Magneto is talking and he says, I knew Charles was gone the moment I could no longer feel him in my head. He said the entirety of I always knew he was in my head, not doing any damage, but always just checking on me. Even from a distance, he always like was there, and now he's not, and it bothers him.
Well, and that was such a good moment too. And this is like right at the start of episode 2, right? So we're getting this really interesting moment between Magneto and Rogue, and he's explaining to her why he wore the helmet, and Rogue gets to the heart of it, where she's like, you wore the helmet not because you were worried about Professor Xavier controlling you, but because you were worried that his presence would convince you not to go through with what you were going through with, because of how close they were and the love that they shared for each other and the friendship that they had. And I was just like, I love that this show is just coming out and like saying, like, it's not subtext. Like, it's just like, look, like this relationship was important and Magneto is complicated because of it. It doesn't feel cheap at all.
Nope.
Like, I can't believe how efficiently they built this. It's so good.
Yeah. It doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel forced. It is legitimately, and it especially if you're a fan of the like what is the X-Men and read anything about it, the conflict that we have seen even in things like Days of Future Past and all of the Marvel, I mean the Fox movies, has been that like there is a love there, like a brotherly love, a very commonality of like, I want mutants to survive, but I want to do it this way and I want to do it this way, and also the errors in both. And Magneto says something pretty interesting that he says it to Scott. He says, hey, I think we both learned something. You know, I probably shouldn't be the one running the X-Men, because now we've just learned something, that Xavier was probably not always right. Which leads into more of episode 2. And if you want to continue, please, what happens next?
So I mean, we move from episode 1, which is this kind of introduction. We get this big kind of like kickoff to things, and then the real story starts picking up in episode 2, where what the conflict actually is going to be about escalates, right? And so we got kind of 2 conflicts that come to the front. And the first is what is going to happen to the X-Men, right? Is Scott going to lead it? Him and Jean Grey, are they going to leave with their new kid? What happens like when they do? Is Magneto actually going to hold to like his promises and like of reforming? And then the other conflict emerges very quickly because the UN comes to arrest Magneto. And Magneto gives himself up. And so that conflict is going to be about like, all right, how does a post Xavier world navigate the conflict between humans and mutants? And
I mean, so, he gets tried as a war criminal. I mean, like essentially a tribunal straight up, and Magneto really does kind of turn himself over and really holds himself. And then during this battle, during this moment, the other villains that you've seen from the very beginning, which are the mutant haters, the equivalent of like what would be the very the supremacist party,
Yep.
The friends, what are the Friends of Humanity? The
Friends of
FOH
Humanity, yeah.
is what they stand for. And one of them, we get a character that we've seen in the comics before. We've never seen him in the animated
The
version, but
Executioner.
the Executioner shows up, and he's essentially a human that just hunts
Yep.
mutants because he's a bigot, right?
Yeah. And this is also where the show really brings the imagery in terms of like, ooh, this feels pretty January 6th-y.
Yeah, man.
Whoa, do they go for
buddy. They wove for it really, 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 really deep.
Because what they've got here is you've got this tribunal going on, lots of dignitaries. The X-Men are present, Magneto's in cuffs, and Executioner and his forces come as protesters. There are already protests going on, and they come in as protesters and storm they storm the Capitol.
They stormed the Capitol building.
Up.
Like, no joke. Like, I mean, this was straight. I was just like, ooh.
I was watching this. I was like, oh damn. Okay.
Yeah. I know this taste. I've tasted this flavor before.
It was impressive.
This allegory is not so allegory anymore.
And so they start fighting it out, and then as they're fighting it out, our girl Jean Grey goes into labor.
Yeah.
And so Cyclops has to go attend to that. And
there's also a great moment.
January 6th stuff.
There's a great Wolverine moment though, right? Like Wolverine. So again, if you remember the 90s cartoon, Wolverine there's a love triangle between Wolverine and Scott and
yeah,
Jean.
Wolverine's whipped.
Yeah, he's always whipped. They've always had this like this triangle. But I think what's nice about Wolverine and this, it's far enough in the relationship of Scott and Jean that he knows he's lost her.
Yeah,
but
he's not. Yeah.
He's not really actively going for Jean.
Right.
But there's a love there that he's
still burning the torch.
Yeah, burning the torch, and she goes into labor, and he's the one protecting her or kind of holding the fort down. And she pulls the like, take me to the hospital, and he's like, oh no, like
there's it's that.
It's that whole like, you gotta get in the car. Grabs the car keys and like driving his Jeep, in the middle of the street, going on the sidewalks, and Jean is like going into full on like psychic labor of like saving people from getting run over at the same time, like peeling back the top of the car and like full on labor pains. And
that just felt like really gutsy to me as a storytelling thing to like immediately be like, oh, we're doing a childbirth scene, and like Cyclops is hurt by the time he gets there. Rogue has to fly him there because he's already taken a beating in the Executioner battle. And it feels dire. It feels really dire. And like then there's like once they get to the hospital, the doctor refuses to deliver
there's a whole moment there, a whole prejudice moment where like the doctor's like, I don't want to work on muties. Right. He uses the muties word.
And this is where like it gets a little bit like, oh man, the X-Men, they don't mess around, because Rogue just like, I'm just gonna zap this guy.
So then the ethical thing goes right out the window, right? So and this is kind of like what I love about the X-Men, right? There's a line, right, that like there's a line that Professor Xavier and all them teach them, but they have to also go. There's a moment where they're like, you know what? Like, we have to cross that line sometimes. Like, and the ethical thing would be like, I have to save Jean. I don't know how to do it. She's gonna die if I don't like help her out. So Rogue does exactly that. She takes her glove off and she's like, uses her power in the best way possible.
Sorry, hon.
I'm sorry, hon. And she basically touches the doctor and just takes, like, obviously he gets it back, but takes all of his like doctor knowledge, and all of a sudden she turns to the nurses and like full on goes, prep the OR and blah blah blah.
And which, by the way, I didn't know she could do. Like,
she takes full on memories.
But like that was like Trinity from the Matrix, just like upload the. I was like, oh wow, okay,
she
cool.
Full on takes all of knowledge, so like, and she's able to apply it, which is what makes her kind of dangerous. But also, that version of Rogue also, at least early on in the cartoon, she really couldn't control it. It was one of those like, if she touched you, she never knew how to really let go.
Yeah, and that's the Rogue we got in the older movies that we got, was like
right.
Had no idea what she was doing.
This one seems to be a little more advanced now. She can like touch and pull away and not like kill the person and drain him to death.
And she's got a past, and she knows it.
Oh yeah, and we get to that a little bit, for sure. There's definitely some past with Magneto and Rogue. That gets touched upon, and because she was kind of a villain for a little bit. She was part of the Brotherhood, for a while. So baby is born, but let's immediately flip back. So while this is all happening, there's still the end battle going on at the Capitol,
Yeah.
and Magneto is still on trial, and he's not like he basically says, "Hey, you're gonna have to take this off me, take the
Yeah.
inhibitor collar." And they're everyone's weary, but they're like, "I'm here to save you guys,"
Yep.
and he does exactly that. They do it. He puts up his magnetic shield and
Well, I
shields
mean, there's this
the
amazing like scene
oh,
where he like basically takes these huge metal like pylons and arranges them in like a circuit around the attack, and then Storm electrifies it, and it looks so cool.
yeah,
It
but it's
looks
also like
so cool.
tribunal justice swords is what he kind
Ah,
of makes
dude.
them. He puts them around him. It's so good. And then, of course, Storm comes in and she's like, in her wonderful goddess way, also the wonderful like exposition and pontificating of like Storm, wonderful verbiage getting thrown around. I love the actress that they chose
Yeah.
for her. All of it has been fantastic. And what happens? The executioner didn't come unprepared. He has a weapon, and this weapon is essentially a concentrated, and they kind of show it in the background. It's essentially the inhibitor collar
Yeah.
at full blast in a bullet.
It's the old
And
Sentinel weaponry.
yeah, taking the old Sentinel weaponry, and essentially it's a sniper rifle that he's about to assassinate or hurt or kill Magneto. And he shoots it, and she steps in and takes the bullet from Magneto.
Yeah.
Which what happens is she basically drops.
Yeah.
And not a few moments later, you get this like powerful, shocking moment
Yeah.
that she can no longer feel the wind. She can no longer, she's essentially been, all of her mutant powers have been removed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's,
I mean, and it's a heartbreaker, man. Like
and
the way
Magneto
they play it is
immediately,
like serious. Like,
yeah.
and they linger on it. It is a
Mhm.
heartbreaker of a moment. I mean, like
Yeah.
my partner was upset.
Yeah. I mean, and it's, they really prefaced it well in these two
Yep.
episodes to kind of show that she is like, again, she is this goddess. She is like
Well,
very in tune, very, very
and what
like
was her opening
powerful.
conversation in that episode? Her opening conversation is Jean talking to her because Jean's about to have this baby, and Jean's worried about bringing a potentially mutant baby into the world who the world is going to hate. And she's basically trying to confess to Storm that, like, I know it's not the right thing to feel, but I sometimes hope that it's just going to be a human so that it has an easier time. And Storm's very sympathetic and then listens and is just wonderful as a friend. But then she's like, I would I've had that thought. I would never want that because I love who I am so much and who she is, these powers and this
Yeah. This
mutant ability.
identity is
And
her
then at the end,
identity.
she loses it. It's such a,
Yeah.
like, again, well-written
Yeah.
arc. I
Perfect.
can't believe how good it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously it's written. It's written there. You see it a mile
Yep.
away,
Yep.
and you know what's going to happen,
The
but it
execution's
still
perfect.
feels just as powerful the
Yeah.
entire time. And it
And
happened.
the voice talent, by the way, is this original voice talent. Like,
Yeah. Oh,
that's Storm from
not
the
everyone
original
is, but
animated
she
series.
is.
Yeah.
So good. So then what happens? Magneto sees this happen and snaps just for a second.
Yep.
And goes full on old school, fire and brimstone Magneto,
Yep.
and immediately encompasses the entire like courtroom and
Yeah.
just rips it out of the Capitol
good.
and goes right into space. And pins the executioner against the like this big like justice seal, turns him upside down and like floating there.
Yep.
Absolutely amazing scene. And then I think like one of the most powerful moments, Magneto just goes into full on like, again, the actor that does this is fantastic. The dialogue is written so well. You see for a moment that he wants to just kill them all.
Yep.
And you see his hand, you see the clench, you see all of this, you see tears running down his eyes.
Yeah.
And then he basically says, but I won't.
Yeah.
I won't let Charles's dream, down. I refuse to do this. I will not kill this man.
Yeah.
I'm bigger and better than this. Just this once, I'm going to do this.
Which was
Any other time.
on an earlier conversation as well about like, does he need to prove himself to the X-Men or does he demand their respect? And you can see him making the choice to prove like who he is in that, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, again, the like care and the I almost want to say like honor they pay to these characters is just so high. It's so good what they're doing.
It's literally the best X-Men anything we've had in a long time, outside of some of the comic stories that we've had in the recent years.
I'll say it's my favorite thing. It's my favorite superhero thing I've seen on screen this side of the Miles Morales movies.
Yeah,
like
I can,
in a long time. It's
yeah,
like
I can agree. It's that good. It's that good. And again, before we jump into episode 3, I just want to say that this is kind of interesting because again, Disney Marvel, not Marvel, Disney Marvel has actively suppressed X-Men merchandise and everything else off the shelves for years
because they haven't figured out how they want to bring it in.
They haven't figured out how to bring it in and make it work in a world with the MCU.
Yep.
And now X-Men 97 is here, and it is exactly the nostalgia bomb that we wanted because it is exactly what we grew up with. It's how most of us remember or know the X-Men. And boy, are they pulling it off.
And it's also not just nostalgia. Like, it is good on its own merits.
It does not
need you.
It doesn't need it doesn't need
it. You know what I mean? Which is so good. And
it's so good.
What you're saying like makes me think too. It's so weird. Disney Plus is not putting this on the front page of anything. Like when you open Disney Plus,
it is not. You have to actually go look for
it. Like crazy. What are you guys doing? Like put it.
But not only they're not talking about it as much as they should, but the public is. I have seen more X-Men like art and fan art and like stuff being shared as of recent more than I have in years. And I'm just like, this is good. This is good. I'm liking this. So episode 3, what happens at the end of episode 2?
So episode 2 gets its own cliffhanger as well. So we episode 1 cliffhanger. Magneto appears. He is in charge of the X-Men now. Episode 2, things are like wrapping up. There's like this conversation of like Magneto. He's
absolved.
He's kind of absolved, and like things are looking interesting, and like kind of okay, what's the next step? And then instead of getting a next step, there's a knock at the door. Well, so they're worried about Storm because Storm leaves. She's like,
Storm leaves. I'm not an X-Men anymore. And so wonderfully written, like goodbye letter. Her not saying goodbye, saying how like she's lost her identity. I no longer feel this connection, this sisterly connection.
Not woe is me, just like I need to do something different. I need to find a different way, right?
Yeah.
And Morph's making jokes about like, oh, she's gonna be back like tomorrow. There'll be a knock at the door, and then there's a knock at the door, and instead of Storm, it is Jean Grey.
It is Jean Grey,
who was already in the house, and so there's 2 Jean Greys. And if you don't have a pretty deep cut of familiarity with like X-Men, that's going to be just like, oh, what is going on? That's weird. But if you have any deep cut familiarity with X-Men, that was like, bro, I don't know how you felt. I was like, oh no,
goosebumps, straight up goosebumps.
I could not believe it.
Yeah.
Because wow, that storyline.
I mean, that storyline is so great. But not only is that storyline great, the wonderful part was a few minutes earlier when we saw the birth and her holding the child and going, them choosing the name, and then they mentioned the name that we all know if you're an X-Men fan, and if you don't know, the name is Nathan Charles Summers. And Nathan Summers, if you're unfamiliar with who that is a wonderful, very 90s. There's big no one more 90s. Big Rob Liefeld energy. Cable.
Yeah.
Cable. Yeah. White-haired, cybernetic arm, freaking
time-traveling soldier.
Time-traveling Thanos-looking movie person is Scott Summers' son.
Yeah. But not Jean Grey's son.
Yeah. And that's where things kind of go. You're like, what? As a comic fan, you know who the mother is. If you don't know, episode 3 kicks in. And so what starts off there?
So, I mean, and we'll just start talking about episode 3 because I know you haven't finished it.
No, you can go for it.
I think
I'm not that far off.
The main thing that I think was so interesting about this choice is it shifts all of the stress about what's happening next back onto Cyclops in a totally different way. And when talking about the writing and how like grown up the writing feels, we've now like moved from, okay, how do we move on past like a beloved one who has died and move forward with their lives to a like broader question about like political sort of like rights and who has rights to like assert themselves and live, and how do you balance that out with a conflict between Magneto and the UN and everybody else. And now it dives pretty much right away into like the most serious identity crisis you can think of in a postpartum situation, right? This is such an obvious like sort of like metaphor for like that postpartum crisis and how hard that can be. And it's just doing it effortlessly. It's not asking permission. It's just like, this is what this is the story we're telling. I can't believe it, man. I'm just blown away. And then on top of that, you get the delicious, like, oh, we're getting Madeline Pryor. Let's go. Let's go. We're getting our girl, the Goblin Queen.
The Goblin Queen.
Yes. And so all of this is basically what we're talking about is Beast ends up doing some tests because the Jean Grey that showed up at the door is not doing great. She's clearly beat up. She can't like really remember stuff. She was able to say she needs the X-Men, but like that's kind of it. And so Beast is doing his doctor thing and taking care of her, and in the process discovers that while her DNA is an exact match for who we thought was Jean Grey, who Cyclops just had a baby with, um, the DNA from the new Jean Grey is the real Jean Grey because it's the right age. And this sends obviously the woman who thinks she is Jean Grey into a total crisis.
Yep.
That allows for the real villain of this little arc to step in, Mr. Sinister.
Yeah.
And
Mr.
so,
Sinister.
Joe, talk to me about Mr. Sinister. What do you know about? What do you feel about Mr.
Man.
Sinister? Because that's another villain that really has not had any time in the sun for most folks for the last 20 years.
Yeah, so Mr. Sinister is a very, very interesting character. He is he's like his entire like power setter's entire kind of thing is, I mean, he's kind of best way to put it is he's the equivalent of like almost like a Nazi doctor in a way. Like
mixed with like Dracula.
Mr. Dracula, like his entirety is very like eugenics.
Yeah.
He's all about purity, all about like, but not only that is he is always interested in mutations and very specific mutations, and he wants to extract and use those mutations and take parts of the DNA and splicing and experimental stuff.
I feel like you would have gotten along with the Atreides.
Right. And graft it to themselves. So he really likes to do that kind of stuff. And with that said, though, he's also like some of the stuff that he's done is very like ethically questionable. Like the things that he does, like the way he's written. I mean, not even like some.
I mean, what does Morph say? Right? Morph calls him the most evil man in the world.
He is. I mean, there are a lot of people are like, oh, well, top tier evil in the X-Men, like in the X-Men mythos would be Mr. Sinister, Apocalypse, and Magneto, and all these. But Mr. Sinister has like a level of like horribleness that is right to the bone. It cuts right to the bone of the X-Men because it's all about like mutations. Right. And the X-Men's whole identity is the fact that they are already like an evolution of humanity. Yeah. And here is this mutant, a mutant of their own kind that is willing to kill and mutilate and change and experiment on mutants.
Yeah, like
not humans, mutants.
Where you have Magneto, who believes in traditionally like mutant supremacy, right?
Yep.
You have Mr. Sinister, who also does, but wants to push it. Like he wants to craft the perfect mutant, which is why he was obsessed with Scott Summers and Jean Grey.
Right.
And so in that obsession, he had cloned Jean Grey, and that is who Scott Summers married and had this child with.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, without I mean, spoiler, not spoiler, it doesn't take long to figure this out. The Jean Grey that was pregnant, the Jean Grey that was in the house, the Jean Grey that thinks is Jean Grey, the one that's just dealing with the birth is not Jean Grey. That is Madeline Pryor, and she is essentially a creation, a clone, a clone, and not a perfect one at that, of Jean Grey. And so there are repercussions to that. She is a character that exists and is there and has feelings and whatever else, but there's also like a little bit of what's that? What's the movie? The Manchurian Candidate? No, what is it? A little bit of what's the silent, like the say the word and it triggers you kind of thing.
Oh yeah, the Manchurian Candidate. Yeah.
Yeah. A little bit of that with her, and it's like she's
like a sleeper agent because Mr. Sinister like kind of like programmed it into her basically.
Yeah. And the Goblin Queen is not someone to mess around with.
Oh no. And we find that out very quickly because like immediately what happens is she's got the same kinds of psychokinetic and psychotelepathic powers as Jean Grey. Not at the same level, but they're very similar. And she plunges the expansion into hell, like
Yeah.
literally hell, like demons and all of that. And when I again, every episode of this show so far has had moments where I can't believe they're going here. And you get this amazing fight scene in the depths of hell. They're trying to figure out what's going on. The X-Men are trying to figure out what's going on, and the Goblin Queen appears. She transforms, and oh my god, the transformation is so
Yeah.
incredible and so
Oh, so
badass.
good. So
I was
good.
like, What's going on? This is amazing."
Yeah.
Um, and it doesn't get disrupted until the real Jean Grey steps in. Uh, and it's intense, man. It's so intense. Because she leaves with Nathan. She leaves with Scott's son.
Yeah. Here's this father who just became a father and just came to like mental grasps of like, I'm a father now. And
Yeah.
the woman that he basically conceived the child with and has like what he thinks are these memories up to a point
Yep.
is now left. And now this version of Jean Grey comes back, who is a little younger, different, the age, DNA age is different. And then like everything past a specific time point
Yep.
has not happened. So there's a relationship that isn't to the level.
Yep.
So we've kind of reset this relationship of Scott and Jean a bit. But
Yep.
at the same time, Scott is now kind of a psychologically torn person.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like he wasn't already, right? Like they're
Yeah.
really gonna go
But
with
we
the
really
Scott.
went after it though.
Yeah,
We
and
really
Scott
leaned in on it.
is really getting tortured in a like X-Men way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
And
far
so
that's where we're at.
what this is so exciting to me about, there's a lot of things that are exciting to me about this. One of the things that's exciting to me about this is I love the sort of like hell spiritual stuff side of the X-Men, everything
Yep.
with magic, who's like Colossus's sister, the Goblin Queen, and then all of that is really relevant to like current comic book runs of the cloning sort of like side plots and the Krakoa stuff.
The Krakoa
So it
stuff, yeah.
feels like a really good way of like someone watching this being like, what the hell's going on? Guess what? You can read comics right now that will help you with that and be
Yeah.
super good. And like that's something the MCU has not always been great at, right? The MCU, you watch the movies are like good. Like I like a lot of the MCU
You're
films,
like,
right?
oh, let me oh, this Iron Man movie's great. Let me go
Yeah.
pick up an Iron Man
But they
book.
don't make me think, oh, I need to know more about that character. They don't pull you into the comics in the same way
Right.
for me.
Or let's talk about it the opposite. Like you're a kid and you go,
Mhm.
"Hey, I just watched this Iron Man or I just watched this Captain America
Yep.
comic. Let me go pick up the newest issue of Civil War just ended. Let me go
Yeah.
pick up the newest run of Captain America. Wait, Captain America's a Nazi? What's going on?
Who's
Or
this? What's going
wait.
on?
Why is Iron Man the villain here? I don't
Yeah, yeah,
understand. Why? Wait, Iron Man isn't cool and loved. He's
yeah.
actually kind of a d-bag and no one
Kind
likes
of a
him.
dick. Yeah,
What? I don't understand. Why is he
yeah,
why is he written? They're writing him badly. The MCU
yeah,
version is superior. I'm like, that's kind of the problem. Is
yeah,
this version of the MCU is dictated kind of this personality. And
yep,
so the comic has had to shift a lot of these characters kind of back
yeah,
to make them more like the movie because it's the only way they can make them relevant to the outside. Because
right,
in the comic, they have not been this way for a while.
right. And I think what this is doing is it just to me this feels like one big invitation back into like a world that's super open, super interesting, really varied. Uh, I just I can't say enough about it. It's so good.
Yeah.
I will tell you right at the end of this episode there is an introduction of another character that I'm
Nope. Go
so
for it. You
excited
can
to
say
see.
it. You can say it.
We get a little scene of Storm at a bar, and who sidles up next to Storm but our boy Forge. And I was like, let's go. So
Yeah.
I'm in heaven with this thing. I can't wait to watch the rest of it. There's one more episode I haven't seen that come out. They're doing it one episode at a time.
One episode a week, which is
If you
nice.
are, yeah, I like that a lot. If you are at all interested in American animation, X-Men, superhero storytelling,
But
how
also if you're burnt out on the superhero trope,
yeah,
and you're looking for something kind of to refresh it and make it
yep.
feel different, this is it. Like
And if you
I
don't want
don't,
to sit somewhere for 3 hours, there's like little 25-minute, 30-minute episodes. Get in, get out.
yeah, and the writing is probably better than some of the movies that we've seen as of late.
Oh, I think the
But
writing is like among the best like
I've seen.
superhero like screenwriting I've seen.
Yep.
It's so good so far. It's so good so far, and it
Wait,
respects you, the viewer. It does not baby you. It
it
doesn't
doesn't.
treat you like an idiot. It's like keep up.
Yep, it doesn't. With that said, I think the news as of now is it has already been renewed for the next season.
Yeah.
So we are going to get a
At least
season
one more.
2, at least one more. And yeah, that's where we're at. So we're going to talk more next week, probably about episode 4 and 5 of
Yeah, we'll
next
check
week a
back
little
in.
bit. We'll jump back in, but I wanted really a love letter to this because I mean, one, it's something that's good right now.
Yeah.
Two, I really like to deep dive on something like this, and 3 episodes of this should kind of get anyone's appetite wet for this show.
Yeah.
Go watch it. I have nothing but good things to say about it. I'm loving it. I'm really feeling the story written very well.
Yeah.
And yeah, man.
So
this is good
who's
stuff.
your favorite? Who's your favorite?
So like I've always been a Logan fan. I've always been
Yeah.
I've always been a Wolverine fan. I mean, it says that I've always been a Wolverine
yeah.
fan. I've been printing out this dang Wolverine mask for a while, and I need to finish it, but I'm trying to get that
sick, man.
done.
That's so good.
So but I'm gonna get that done eventually, and I'm a Wolverine fan. But with that said, though, I also am a huge fan of Gambit. This version of Gambit in the comics, he depends on which version, but in the comics, I really like the Rogue Gambit like power couple.
Yeah.
In what I like about the comic is they let them be together, and not only be together, work together in like a way where they're like almost like a
they're like Marvel's version of Hawkgirl, Hawkman, right? Like
yeah.
Actual like dynamics there.
Yeah, where relationship wise, they sometimes work, sometimes don't. They fight, whatever, but they really are meant to be together.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Rogue has been paired up in multiple times with someone like Magneto.
Yeah.
And if you're familiar with the story arc from the 90s, the Age of Apocalypse story arc that happened, very, very, very popular, very super 90s also. Where we had an alternate timeline where Professor Xavier was killed very early on, and the shift in the timeline caused a whole new kind of Marvel universe where the X-Men didn't exist in the same route, and Magneto took over and created the X-Men in a very different light.
Yep.
And Rogue and Magneto were married.
Yeah.
And there were other characters, other heroes that were involved, and it's such a good story arc, and there's been mentions and whatever else, and even characters of those have been brought back into the main continuity. Dark Beast is one of them, which is that's a tough one to kind of like touch on. But with that said, though, there's a lot of love out there right now. Go pick up an X-Men trade. Go to your local comic book. Go open up the Comixology app. There's sales
Marvel
going on right
is
now.
Pretty good too. Marvel Unlimited has like recommended lists for if you're like interested in checking out like how do I get up to speed on this particular thing, and that's super helpful.
There's a bunch of trials that you could pick up. I think like 30-day trials or 7-day trials. And what's nice about Comixology is they have them separated into trades almost, and you can immediately use a Kindle, you can use an iPad, whatever, your phone to read these, and it's got a really good reader. Basically, it even has a way that you can go panel by panel, where it'll like zoom into the panel and kind of go and read it for you in a way, and that's really cool. So go check it out. I'm excited. I'm really excited for the new Marvel X-Men trajectory.
Me too.
And
this got me excited about it.
This got me excited. I really am really excited about this. So yeah, who's your favorite X-Men, or who's your favorite mutant? I mean, you said Sunspot was a good one.
I mean, Sunspot's good. I mean, I think when I was a kid, it was definitely Cyclops. I loved Cyclops. I loved his like whole like blue and yellow. And I thought like the ability was like so cool.
The 90s Jean Grey, Jim Lee style. Cyclops is
just super iconic. I mean, I think I'd probably say I'd probably say like still Cyclops. I mean, I think Angel is cool. I don't know where Angel's at.
Right now
to see if he comes in this show.
Well, I mean,
Morph changed into him real quick.
He did. He
changed
the first
episode.
Yeah, and he. I mean, we did get a whole like arc of him becoming Archangel with Apocalypse and all of that, and the experimentation and whatever else. So I don't know, man.
The mutant, my favorite's Nightcrawler though. Nightcrawler.
Oh, that's a good mutant.
So and I think Nightcrawler for me is why I love X2 so much. Have you read anything about Nightcrawler in the recent years, like in the recent story arc? I haven't. No. I need to catch up on that part.
So can I drop a little knowledge bomb
go for it,
on you?
please.
So in the modern telling, a recent canon change
Yep.
that has happened within the Nightcrawler uh kind of universe or story or whatever, and it's been kind of like, oh my god, what are you doing? Oh my god, why? Um, for many years we have been like, well, who's Nightcrawler's mother?
Yeah.
And no, Mystique is not Nightcrawler's mother. Mystique is Nightcrawler's father.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Okay.
And if
Okay.
you're like, what? I don't understand. I'm like, Mystique is a shapeshifter, and her
Yeah.
shapeshifting
Yeah.
into whatever she wants includes
Yeah.
being
Yep.
a man.
Yep.
And so she is actually Nightcrawler's father.
That's amazing. I love
It's
that.
a great, there's a
I can't wait to
there's
catch
a
up on
whole
that.
comic on that, and it's absolutely amazing. And I kind of dig it. Like, it's kind of a way to like use her again, but also in her powers, and go like, yeah, no, wait, her powers work complete, and it's
Yeah.
very cool. It's very
Yeah.
cool. So
Yeah, this is another reason I love the X-Men, and they've always been my favorite superheroes, is because I don't think there's another suite of superheroes that's so good at telling like contemporary stories in ways that feel really immediate and connected to our world. Like,
right.
and I don't want all comics to be that. I like comics to be fantastical too. I like comics to be really kind of like big, broad allegories, but like you just get there's so much like density and interest to each X-Men character. I love it so much. I can't wait to get back into the comics. I can't wait for
I also love the fact that the mutants themselves, right? Like, mutant kind and mutants themselves, they're heroes, but they're not heroes because they want to be.
yeah.
They're heroes almost because they have to be for survival purposes.
I mean, basically,
Not all of them. Yeah, not all of
either a
them.
hero or a villain.
Yeah, not all of them go out and like save people. A
Yep.
lot of them are just using their powers for self-preservation.
Just to survive.
Like, it's just to survive. So like, they're not all forced to be heroes. They're not always all in a team. A lot of them are members of the X-Men or X-Force or X-Factor or one of the X teams, but not all of them do it for the same reasons. A lot of them do it because I have a power subset that helps my fellow kind.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. And that's a completely different like way to kind of, they're not the Avengers because they're the Avengers because humanity needs the Avengers. They're the X-Men because like we're kind of being hunted and killed.
Yeah.
So
yep. I would the last recommendation I'd say, if you do want to check out like some comics, you're interested in like what the X-Men are doing right now, I still think that the 2021 run of Hellions is a really great run. It's 18 comics. It gets you a lot of Mr. Sinister, and it gets you a lot of kind of like B tier mutants that have to interact with like the A tier who are like ruling the world basically. So it's like Psylocke and Havoc. It's a really worth checking that series out. That's the
go check that one out.
Run.
That is a good arc. And with that, thanks, folks. I mean, oh my god, we got to geek out for an hour and change on just X-Men. I don't get to do that very often, and that's so cool.
That was great.
That was so cool. Folks, please go watch it. And also, if you liked content like this, we talked, Jordan and I talked about it a little bit last week. And while we will still be doing a lot of like news and whatever else, I really like the idea of us planning a subject, for of sorts, and really kind of going into that. And if you like that, let us know. Please comment, do whatever we need to do, and just give us that feedback. Share ideas. If you're not noticing, this episode was not put up on YouTube for a reason. This episode will drop on YouTube tonight. I'm basically going to grab the video and throw it up there, and that's basically going to make it so that this video is now a video that gets put up, not a live stream on the YouTube algorithm, which will allow commentary and that sort of thing. So let's talk about it. Let me know in the comments below on the YouTube version if you want, or reach out to us on what is the shell of Twitter or the Facebook, or on Threads. I'm on Threads as well. I'm on Instagram.
I'm really active on Threads. So
you can find us at all the different places for sure. But thanks so much for spending your Thursday night with us, and we'll be back next week. And thanks so much. Be kind, Jordan. Thanks. We'll be back next week.
Sounds good.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep. Bye.